Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another Vegas Voice segment of Seniors Vote. I'm Dan Roberts, the publisher of the magazine, and our job is to introduce you to all the people who have decided to run for public office. We have somebody who is one of a kind, and I can't wait to introduce him, and that is Mr. Michael Murphy. Thank you so much for being here.
Dan, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You know, you are running for Clark County Public Administrator.
That's correct.
That's a great title. What is a public administrator?
You know, I have to tell you, I think very few people probably understand what the public administrator does. So in a very brief overview here, the public administrator is responsible for people's property after they die if they do not have a will, a trust, and or an executor for their estate. And you would think in Las Vegas, how often would that happen? Well, first of all, many of our residents are transit, or transplants, as I should say. And as I am, I got here 40 years ago from Kansas City. And so my family, the majority of my family still lives in the Midwest. So if something were to happen to me, do I have a support mechanism that will be able to support me? And that happens in a variety of ways here in the Valley. One of them is if someone should pass away and there's no one to take over their property, then the public administrator has to step in and assume that responsibility. You think, how often does that happen? A couple thousand times a year in Las Vegas.
And let me cut you off.
Yeah.
The people that it happens to, are they in trailer parks or they have real homes?
Oh, no, certainly it cuts across the wide swath of our society. But if you think about it, who dies? It's not just people in a trailer park or someone who's a transient on the street. We're talking about you might be in your neighborhood. You have an HOA. You're in this gated community. Someone dies next door, and they have not done any planning, or the executor that has been designated says, "I don't want to do it." So now the county steps in, and we have investigators that have to go out and secure that property. They're going to go through your home. They're going to inventory everything, and then we have to, first of all, try to find a legal next of kin that will accept responsibility. And if not, then the county becomes your executor. And so it's government really in the very bowels of your life. You know, for lack of a description. And I think you need to think about that there's better ways to do that. So I think the office needs to do several things. Some of them they're, of course, already doing, and that is to handle the property appropriately, which is what they do. You got to watch out that the association fees are being paid, that if there's any pets or vehicles, all that stuff has to be dealt with, and you need to do it in a timely manner because nothing gets better with age. The car that's sitting out front, if it goes now and sits in a tow yard for 2 years waiting to settle that estate, what might have been worth $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 is now worth $8,000, $10,000, or $15,000. And so you want to take care of that. The association, this is your next door neighbor, right?
Yeah.
The weeds are growing up, nothing's being taken care of. It might be that it gets broken into, that it's being vandalized. And so the quicker you can deal with those issues, the better. But the truth is you also need to appropriately protect those things so that the association doesn't take it based on fees.
Yep.
And so then you lose the house because of arrears on fees and things like that, or taxes, whatever it is. And so bank accounts. And so one of the first things you want to do is find the heirs, if at all possible. You've got to find the heirs and then encourage them to be involved in the process. And then if they're not, then again, the county will do it. So it requires the county, the public administrator's office, they have a relationship with attorneys, with realtors, with people who liquidate property, auto auctions, you name it. Everything you can think of, board up services. There should be a contract for security on those properties, so there's drive-bys going on. You might end up having biohazard cleanup because you got to remember the coroner's office is going to come in and remove the decedent, but the biohazard's going to be left behind. And now that estate is required for that cleanup. So you need to have a vendor for that. There's a lot of different moving parts and pieces.
Look, and the interesting thing, and it's like addressing the elephant in the room.
Sure.
If people know who the public administrator's office is, they're going to think of the previous gentleman who was now spending his life in jail for murdering the reporter.
That's correct.
And even going back further, when the Vegas Voice got involved, is that the public administrator was the guardian who started the whole mess with guardianship. But you have some real practical experience, both as a coroner's office
That's correct.
as well as in the public administration office. Talk a little bit about that, because you have the experience.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm a former police chief. I was a police officer in a couple of different places, Boulder City. I was a police chief out in Mesquite. I was deputy chief for City of Las Vegas for 3 years. And then I got the opportunity to apply for the coroner's office. A lot of people think you have to be a doctor.
Yeah.
You do not. You can either have a law enforcement or investigative background or be a medical doctor. There are 7 doctors that work at the office. So you're the chief executive. You're running the office. And one of the things you do is work closely with the public administrator's office. In '08, when the budget went bad with everybody, the public administrator at that time turned around and said, we're not going to be able to do field response anymore. So they asked the coroner's office to do it. So I was deputized at that time as the deputy public administrator so we could handle some of the property issues. And then, yes, after I retired, I was asked to come back during the tumultuous times at the public administrator's office involving the individual that murdered the investigative report. And so I worked with Rita Reed, who ultimately was elected during that cycle. She decided not to run for election again, and has now said that she is endorsing me as to be the next public administrator. Yes.
Again, I mean, also the fact that in today's Review Journal was their picture with the 3 other ladies who were
Correct.
reached a settlement. And how long have you been in effect involved with the public administration?
So I've been involved with the public administrator since I was the county coroner. Yeah. So that would have been 2002 is when that all started. So all of that time, but I would tell you I was intimately involved brought in as the consultant to work with Rob Tellis, the individual who was there at the time, as they were going into the election cycle. So I stayed in the office. Ultimately, he did not make it through the primary. She did.
She did. Rita did.
And then, yes, Rita did. And then she was elected in the general election. So I stayed with her through May of the next year. So I was there 11 months, assisting her and trying to navigate, keeping the office together and to slow down the chaos and to bring more of a calming hand to that process so that they could get to the business of doing the business they were supposed to be doing, and not all of the issues in reference to the politics of it and the murder and things of that nature. So I spent that time there.
Okay,
and I still continue to go there about every month, anywhere from every 2 weeks to a month. And I'm not being paid for that, but I've gone there to meet with Rita and continue to consult with her on things she can be doing to better the office.
And you have in effect an inside office as to what's going on there. Forget the politics, forget the drama, forget the chaos, the whole bit. What do you have in mind that you think, listen, this would really make the public administrator's office better for the public?
Well, there's multiple things, but let me run down a few of them real quick. One of the first ones is I believe that all of the people that go into your home or an individual's home after they die should be on body cams, same way our police officers are. And that way there's no question what they were doing in the home, what they did, what they didn't do. I believe that they should automate do more automation into the recovery of property and how it's done. You could use RF tags, scanners like you see at Walmart when you click on it, so that when they capture this as a property, they scan it. It doesn't have to be handled 3 or 4 more times. It can be scanned right when it comes in. So better use of technology, not to replace employees, to enhance their work so that they can do their work more efficiently. So that's another thing I think needs to happen. Another one that I think is very important, and I've always done, anywhere I've ever gone, I've always sat down with all the employees and I've asked them a couple of questions. 3 specific questions, as a matter of fact. Yeah. First one is, what do you think we do well? Second question is, what do you think we should do better? And if I was a genie and I could grant you a wish, what would you want what would you want it to be so that we can make your job easier or more effective? And I find by doing that, that lets me know what are that's my marching orders for the future, right? So that we can better the office. Another thing that's not being done and hasn't been done to my knowledge is a partnership with local attorneys, and there is free attorneys, by the way, free legal services, so that people have wills and trusts. Yeah. So when they die, they don't need the public administrator's office. We want to prevent having the need for the office, not enhance it. Not looking for more work, actually looking for less. Yeah. And that would keep government out of your life, so to speak, and would allow people to be better prepared. We're all going to die. Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to to think about it, but it happens. So when you check into hospice, think about it, or you go into you check into a senior care facility or whatever it is. I'll bet you money they want to know who your next of kin is.
Yep.
They want to know things like, do you have advanced directives? Do you have a DNR? Do you not resuscitate? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Whatever those things are. Why shouldn't it include, do you have a will and a trust and an executor?
I would be shocked if they don't ask you that.
They don't.
Isn't that something as simple as that?
Exactly. So why aren't we partnering with those organizations? And then if people say, I can't afford it, there's legal services that are available for free.
Yeah.
For free. And then one of the other things I'd like to do is come up with a way that we could either put some type of a sticker or something that's easy for investigators to see that would either be on your fridge or somewhere so that we could scan it, so it wouldn't have information that people that come to your house could get. We could scan it and go, we know everything about you, who your legal next of kin is, where your paperwork is, everything's there, and encourage people to do that in advance. So it's a multi-part process. I want to take care of employees. I want to take care of proving to the public we're open and transparent. We have a high level of integrity. Want to make sure that, by the way, the employees are getting their evaluations in a timely manner so they can get their raises. And that we proceduralize everything so that if I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm going to judge you on how you do it, shouldn't I have a procedure for it?
I would like to.
So a lot of procedures that still need to be put in place. Rita's been working on that for the last few years. That still needs to be worked on. And then the other part of this is to prevent the need for the office in the future.
Yeah.
That's never going to go away. You know that. But couldn't we reduce the number of cases coming through the door so that we can be more effective in what we do? And so partnerships with private sector, utilizing employees to the very best that we can, making sure that they all get paid appropriately and that they're held accountable for what they do, and that when they do good work, we give them the rewards of their work.
Again, I agree with you on the transparency. How many times have we heard through the Vegas Voice that, my mom died, my dad died, and it's funny, the jewelry's gone, and
Sure.
And it's just a terrible thing. And we believe someone like you can clean everything up, get it open, let the public know what's going on.
And you bring up a great point about the jewelry's gone. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Maybe somebody else got in there,
Yeah.
a neighbor or another family
relative.
member.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And so understanding what we found when we went through the door, so that's all on video, so that you could always sit down with the family and say, this is what we did.
Yeah.
Another thing that I found while I was the coroner, by the way, is that someone would come to see, maybe grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, mom, dad would die, and the rest of the family's back east or wherever they are. And they'd say, we think someone abused our loved one. They didn't give them the appropriate care, and they'd complain about the care facility or whatever. Sometimes that's the case, oftentimes not. And so one of the things I would always ask is, so when's the last time you saw mom and dad or grandma and grandpa? And what you end up finding out is they'll go, honey, when was that? And you go, so you were close, yes. We talked a lot on the phone, but we hadn't been there in 5 years. Do you know how much can change in 3 or 4 years? And maybe that property's been given away. And there is protection for seniors, about that I can't as a senior, I'm a senior, I can't leave things to someone that's just a caregiver.
It's
right. And that's all done specifically to protect what you've worked hard for. Now, I've had some people say this to me: I am not leaving my estate. And by the way, emphasis on the way I would say that. I'm not leaving my estate to my kids or my this or my that. Okay. But what you don't want to do is leave it to the government.
Yeah.
Right. So why shouldn't it go to an appropriate charity or someone that you designate, not somebody that I designate?
It seems like a very simple answer, but it's just never going to get done.
Yes, it's simple, but it's extremely complicated.
Yeah.
It's a dichotomy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in the few moments we have left, if people want more information about you,
bet.
How do they get in touch with you, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I want to make sure I'm going to read this right off the card, make sure I say this right. So you can email me at info@murphy4clarkcounty.com. Our website is murphy4clarkcounty.com. That was pretty easy.
Yep.
You can call me at 702-248-9401. That's 702-248-9401. And I want to mention that I am the only candidate that's actually run the office before. I have the support of Rita Reed, who's retiring now at the end of her term, and we've worked together closely. I want the opportunity to continue with the transparency and the openness of government, but also at the same time, I would cherish and very much be humbled if you would give me your vote. I want to thank you very much for that.
And with that in mind, I thank you for being here, Mike. And this is Dan Roberts for Seniors Vote saying we'll see you next time. Thank you again.
Appreciate you, Dan.